The silent discovery. The vastness of space had never felt quite so empty as it did on day 847 of the mission. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood in the observation deck of the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge, watching stars drift past like ancient memories. Her ship had traveled farther from Earth than any human vessel before it, pushing into regions where no telescope had ever peered and no radio signal had ever reached. The United Planetary Fleet had sent them out here with a simple mission: explore, document, and search for signs of intelligent life. So far, they had found nothing but empty space and lifeless rocks. Sarah was a woman of 42 years, with sharp brown eyes that missed little, and a commanding presence earned through 15 years of service. She had led crews through asteroid fields and solar storms, but nothing had prepared her for the crushing monotony of the deep void. Her crew of 28 souls depended on her steady leadership, and she wore that responsibility like a second skin. "The anomaly appears, Commander. You need to come to the bridge immediately." The voice of Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's chief science officer, crackled through her communicator with an urgency that made her pulse quicken. In 2 years of working together, Marcus had never sounded quite like this. There was something in his tone that went beyond excitement, something that touched on awe. Sarah moved quickly through the narrow corridors of the Horizon's Edge. The ship was designed for efficiency rather than comfort, with every centimeter of space serving a purpose. She passed crew members who nodded respectfully as she went by, their faces showing curiosity about the sudden alert. When she reached the bridge, she found it transformed from its usual calm efficiency into a hub of controlled chaos. Marcus stood at the central holographic display, his hands moving rapidly across the controls. Around him, the bridge crew worked with intense focus. The display showed a three-dimensional representation of the space ahead, and at its center pulsed a signal unlike anything Sarah had ever seen: an impossible structure. "What am I looking at?" Sarah asked, moving to stand beside Marcus. The science officer was a tall man with gray, threading through his dark hair, originally from the Mars colonies. His expertise in xenobiology and astroarchaeology had made him invaluable on this mission, but right now he looked like a child who had just discovered something magical. "We detected it 3 hours ago," Marcus explained, his voice trembling slightly. "At first our sensors registered it as a stellar anomaly, maybe a strange asteroid cluster or unusual space debris. But Commander, this is neither natural nor random. This is artificial." He adjusted the display and Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. The image resolved into something that defied immediate comprehension. It was a vessel, but calling it a ship seemed inadequate. The structure stretched for kilometers in every direction, its hull composed of materials that seemed to shift and shimmer even in the still image. The design was neither purely organic nor geometric, but somehow both at once, as if the builders had transcended the choice between nature and mathematics. "How large is it?" Sarah asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Approximately 15 kilometers in length," replied Lieutenant Nina Volkov, the navigation officer. The young woman from Earth's Russian territories had exceptional spatial reasoning skills. "Width varies between 4 and 7 kilometers. Mass readings are inconsistent, almost as if the structure is phasing in and out of our dimension slightly." Failed communication attempts. Sarah studied the image carefully, her mind racing through possibilities and protocols. First contact procedures had been drilled into every member of her crew, but those procedures assumed they would encounter living beings, or at least active technology. This vessel appeared completely dormant, a ghost ship floating in the endless night. "Have we attempted communication?" she asked, though she could guess the answer. James Chen, the communications officer, turned in his seat to face her. James was a third-generation spacer, born on one of Jupiter's moons, and he possessed an almost intuitive understanding of communication systems. His normally confident expression showed frustration. "Every standard protocol, Commander. Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, binary patterns, radio frequencies across every known spectrum. We've transmitted greetings in 73 languages, both human and the theoretical alien linguistic frameworks. Absolutely no response." "Could it be completely dead?" asked Chief Engineer Thomas Okonkwo. The broad-shouldered man from the West African Union had kept the Horizon's Edge running flawlessly for nearly 3 years. "Perhaps we're looking at an ancient derelict with no power remaining." Marcus shook his head vigorously. That's what I thought initially, but look at these readings. He brought up a new display showing energy signatures. There's a power source inside that vessel. It's faint, almost imperceptible, but it's there. Whatever technology is generating that power, it's been running for an extremely long time without any apparent fuel source or degradation. An ancient mystery. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. How long are we talking about, Marcus? Give me your best estimate. The science officer hesitated, glancing at his colleagues before answering. Based on the hull composition analysis, cosmic radiation exposure patterns, and the degradation of trace elements we can detect, I estimate this vessel has been here for at least 2 million years. Possibly significantly longer. The bridge fell silent. 2 million years ago, humans were still learning to make stone tools. The entirety of recorded human history was barely 6,000 years old. This ship had been floating in space since before humanity knew fire, before they built cities, before they dreamed of touching the stars. That's impossible, Lieutenant Volkov whispered. Nothing could survive that long in space, especially not with an active power source. Clearly something can, Marcus replied quietly. And did. The question is why? Why build something meant to last for millions of years? What purpose could possibly require that kind of longevity? The decision to investigate Sarah made her decision quickly, the way she always did when faced with the unknown. Hesitation served no purpose, but neither did recklessness. Set course for intercept, but maintain a safe distance of 5 kilometers. I want continuous scans of that vessel from every sensor we have. Look for any changes in energy output, any response to our approach, anything at all. Should we alert Fleet Command? Asked James, his hand hovering over the communications console. Sarah considered this carefully. They were 18 months from Earth at maximum speed, far beyond real-time communication range. Any message they sent would take months to reach home, and any response would take just as long to return. Whatever decisions needed to be made, they would make them here, now, without guidance from distant authorities. Send a standard contact report, but keep it brief, she decided. Include images and preliminary data, but we proceed with our investigation regardless. We didn't come all this way to turn back at the first sign of something extraordinary. As the horizon's edge adjusted course toward the ancient vessel, Sarah couldn't shake a strange feeling that had settled over her. It wasn't fear exactly, though caution certainly played a part in her thoughts. It was more like the sensation of standing at a threshold, knowing that once you stepped through, everything would change forever. Whatever they were about to discover, whatever secrets that ancient ship held, humanity would never be quite the same again. The mysterious vessel grew larger in their view screens, silent and patient, waiting as it had waited for longer than human civilization had existed, and somewhere deep in its ancient halls, something that had slept for millions of years began to stir. The unexpected awakening. The horizon's edge drifted closer to the ancient vessel over the next 6 hours, moving with the careful precision of a cat approaching something it didn't quite understand. Commander Sarah Mitchell had ordered reduced speed, wanting time to analyze every piece of data their sensors could gather. The crew worked in shifts, nobody wanting to miss a moment of this historic encounter, yet everyone needing rest for what might come next. Sarah stood in the science laboratory with Marcus and his team, studying the 3-dimensional projections of the alien ship that rotated slowly in the air before them. The more data they gathered, the less sense it made. The hull material defied classification, registering as both metallic and organic depending on which sensors examined it. The energy signature remained constant but impossible to trace to any specific location within the vessel. Strange patterns in the silence. I've been comparing our scans with every known spacecraft design in human history, said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the assistant science officer. The young woman from the Pacific Alliance had a gift for pattern recognition that bordered on supernatural. There are elements here that almost match principles we use in our own ships, but they're so far advanced that it's like comparing a wooden cart to a magnetic levitation train. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, his fingers tracing along the holographic hull. What troubles me most is the perfection of it. After 2 million years in space, exposed to radiation, micrometeorite impacts, and gravitational stresses, this vessel should show some damage. But look at these readings. The hull integrity is flawless, as if it was built yesterday. Maybe it repairs itself. suggested Thomas from where he stood near the doorway. The chief engineer had been called down to offer his perspective on the vessel's construction. We've developed some self-healing materials for our own ships, though nothing that could last more than a few decades without maintenance. Self-healing for 2 million years? Yuki asked skeptically. That would require an energy expenditure that should have drained any power source long ago, no matter how advanced. The approach Sarah listened to her team debate the possibilities, but her attention kept returning to the visual feed, showing the alien vessel growing larger in their approach. Something about its design spoke to her in a way she couldn't quite articulate. It wasn't threatening despite its massive size. If anything, it seemed almost welcoming, though that thought made her question her own judgment. Commander, we're reaching the 5-kilometer marker, Lieutenant Volkov reported through the communication system. Shall we maintain position? Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. Bring us in closer. 2 kilometers, then hold position. Marcus looked at her with concern. That's well within any potential weapon range, assuming this thing has weapons. If it wanted to harm us, it could have done so already, Sarah replied, though she kept her hand near the emergency alert button on her wrist device. We need better resolution on our scans, and that means getting closer. But battle stations, just in case. As the horizon's edge moved into closer range, the ancient vessel dominated their view screens. At this distance, they could see details that had been invisible before. The hull wasn't smooth, but covered in patterns that might have been decorative, or might have served some function. Lines of slightly different coloring traced across the surface in designs that reminded Sarah of circuit boards or perhaps flowing water. The accidental discovery on the bridge. James Chen sat at his communication station feeling frustrated. He had tried every method of establishing contact that he could think of, from simple radio signals to complex mathematical patterns that should have been universal. The alien ship remained as silent as a tomb. He ran his fingers through his black hair. A gesture his mother always said meant he was thinking too hard. This is pointless, he muttered to himself in Mandarin, forgetting for a moment that his console microphone was active. Why won't you just talk to us? We've come so far and you're right there and you have to know we're here. Can't you give us something? Anything. The words were spoken in exhaustion and frustration, not as an official communication attempt. They were the plea of a man who had spent his entire career learning to bridge gaps between different peoples and cultures, now facing a gap that seemed impossibly wide. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. The awakening. The ancient vessel blazed to life. Energy cascaded across its hull in waves of blue and green light, patterns flowing and shifting like northern lights dancing across a planet's magnetic field. The horizon's edge shook as proximity alarms screamed warnings throughout the ship. Energy readings spiked so high they went off the scale of their instruments. Report, Sarah shouted, racing onto the bridge from the adjacent ready room where she had been reviewing crew schedules. The vessel just activated, Nina called out, her hands flying across her navigation controls. Energy output increased by several thousand% in the last 10 seconds. It's generating some kind of field that's affecting our instruments. Thomas's voice came through from engineering, strained, but controlled. Commander, that energy wave passed right through our shields like they weren't even there. It didn't harm us, but it scanned everything. I mean everything. Our computers, our power systems, even the biological signatures of the crew. Sarah gripped the back of James's chair, staring at the view screen where the alien ship now pulsed with vibrant life. What did you do, Lieutenant Chen? James looked pale, his hand still hovering over his console as if afraid to touch anything. I didn't do anything, Commander. I was just talking to myself. I was frustrated and I spoke in Mandarin, not even trying to communicate officially. What exactly did you say? Marcus had arrived on the bridge, his tablet in hand, already recording everything. I asked why it wouldn't talk to us, James replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I asked if it couldn't give us something, anything. But I wasn't transmitting on any standard channel. I was just talking. Understanding the response, Yuki appeared at Marcus's side, her own tablet showing streams of data. Commander, I think I understand what happened. We've been trying to communicate using standardized protocols, mathematical sequences, things we thought would be universal. But this ship didn't respond to universal concepts. Then what did it respond to? Sarah asked, though a theory was already forming in her mind. Human voice, Yuki said, her eyes bright with realization. Not our technology, not our mathematics. Our voice, The organic sound of a human speaking with emotion, with frustration, with genuine feeling. James wasn't trying to communicate formally. He was expressing himself honestly, and that's what the ship recognized. Marcus was nodding rapidly, his fingers dancing across his tablet. It makes a certain kind of sense. If this vessel was created by a civilization advanced enough to build something lasting millions of years, they might have understood that the most genuine form of communication isn't structured protocol. It's authentic expression. They programmed their ship to respond not to signals, but to sentience. New patterns emerge. The alien vessel's lights had settled into a rhythmic pattern now, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Sarah studied the display, noting how the energy flows seemed almost organic in their movement. "Lieutenant Chen, I want you to try speaking to it again, but this time do it deliberately. Speak naturally in whatever language feels most comfortable to you." James swallowed hard, suddenly aware that the entire bridge crew was watching him. He activated his microphone, but this time he didn't transmit on standard frequencies. Instead, he simply spoke aloud, letting his voice carry through the ship's external audio systems. "Hello," he said in Mandarin, then repeated it in English. Then in the other 6 languages he spoke fluently. "My name is James Chen. I'm from Earth, a planet many light years from here. We mean you no harm. We're explorers, seeking to understand the universe and our place in it. Can you understand me?" For a long moment nothing happened. Then the patterns on the alien vessel shifted, the lights coalescing into formations that almost looked like written language, though in no script any human had ever seen. The formations held for several seconds before dissolving and reforming into new patterns. "It's trying to communicate back," Marcus breathed. "It's attempting to find a common language." Sarah felt her heart racing. After 2 years of finding nothing but empty space, after humanity's centuries-long search for proof that they weren't alone in the universe, they had finally found it. And somehow, impossibly, it was responding to them. An invitation. The patterns on the hull shifted one more time, and this time they formed something unmistakable. A section of the vessel's surface began to glow with a different intensity, marking a specific location on the massive structure. As they watched, that section seemed to ripple and change, transforming from solid hull into something that looked like an opening. "I think it just opened a door," Nina said quietly, disbelief evident in her voice despite the evidence on her screens. Thomas's voice came through from engineering again. "Commander, I'm also detecting a stabilization field forming between our ship and that opening. It's creating a safe path for transit." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that the next decision she made would be one of the most important in human history. They had made contact with an intelligence that had existed long before humanity, and now it was inviting them inside. Every protocol she had ever learned said to proceed with extreme caution, to take time to analyze and prepare. But another part of her, the part that had driven her to become an explorer in the first place, knew that some opportunities only came once. "Assemble a boarding team," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Standard first contact equipment, full environmental suits, and emergency beacons. "Lieutenant Chen, you're with me. Whatever that ship is, it responded to you. Let's go find out why." As the crew moved to prepare, Sarah looked out at the ancient vessel with its pulsing lights and open doorway. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that they were standing at a threshold that humanity would never be able to cross back over. Whatever they found inside that ship would change everything they thought they knew about the universe and their place in it. The alien vessel waited patiently, its lights pulsing like a beacon in the darkness. A mystery 2 million years old finally ready to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to listen.